Hi, welcome back to the channel. Michelle, and today I'm going to be sharing a recap of how our summer homeschool went. So if you're new to my channel, we do a Sabbath schedule. So we do 6 weeks on, 1 week off, sometimes it's 7 weeks. But we do year-round schooling. So a lot of our summer stuff is just a continuation of what we were doing during the school year. But I thought I'd recap and show you what we did and how everything went. But starting really quick with my preschooler, things went really well for him. He was doing this dry erase board to practice letters and numbers. That went well. He's moved into his Handwriting Without Tears book since then. I got these from Ollie's, and it's just a set of little preschool worksheets, cut and paste, almost like Kumon workbooks. He did really well with those. He didn't obviously not finish those because that's a lot of books, but we would pick one sheet a day. He did it. He did finish his Curious George Adventures in Learning. He finished this entire thing, and he really liked it. He thought this was a lot of fun, and this is something I used with one of my older children as well. So I think this is a great preschool resource, and who doesn't love Curious George? So he continued with his letter sounds. We did bring in Reading Reflex this summer to help with he was having some issues with letter sounds and segmenting, and it was something I was troubleshooting. This really helped, and there's a bunch of activities. You can see I printed out different things here, different segmenting activities, and it's done by sound. So that has really helped him, and I think it will prepare him for reading. So that is something we troubleshooted with him. The other thing he did was core knowledge preschool. We finished up 2 units this summer. We did animals and we did plants, and that went really well. He really enjoys the core knowledge units, and we just finished up plants, and during the plants we actually grew our own sunflowers so he could look at the roots and the different parts of the plant, and he checked on it every day. So he actually really enjoys it, and I think one thing I really love about core knowledge is this idea that even young children can be exposed to, bigger ideas. They can be exposed to science. They can be exposed to history at a preschool age level. Obviously, it's age appropriate, but they can take on this information, and he really enjoyed the units. And I did like that core knowledge brought in a lot of different segmenting that I have seen used in other resources or curriculum for preschool, kindergarten, first grade, that it's all compiled in there. So although it was a harder unit to implement because it's very based on groups or centers, that it's adaptable, but it's a little more work on your part to pick through what you're actually going to use. But the things I did use, I really enjoyed, and my 4-year-old really does enjoy the core knowledge preschool units. So that was him. Next, I'm going to show you my 7-year-old. So this is my 7-year-old's June schedule, and again, I just make these off Canva. This is a free template, and I just put different graphics in it to kind of describe my different kids, and different graphics. For example, we did climate study this summer that kind of show that. So for math, no surprise there, it's gone well. She continues on with dimensions. She's almost done and ready for 2B. That went well this summer. Math skills, I brought in math skills for my oldest and my 7-year-old. Now hers has become more on the level of optional now, just because we've started to get into next year's curriculum. That next year is really heavy in language arts, and she's really pretty good with math. So these are optional, but she really does enjoy doing the sheets, and if she has spare time, if I'm helping another kid, she really does enjoy doing these. She's very math-minded, puzzle-oriented. She likes that. Handwriting, she switched over to doing this, and she's really enjoyed it. She's, again, not diagnosed as dyslexic, but she does have letter and number reversal issues that I've been trying to correct. So again, she really has enjoyed this workbook. We'll continue this on into the school year. She, of course, has continued all about reading level 3. That's been going well this summer. Continue on with that. She's also doing Song School Spanish. We started this, and the vocabulary has upped. You can see here, I made copies of this so I can use it for future kids. But you can see that's all the vocabulary. So we just did days of the week and months of the year. And we've been doing the activity guides and the teacher guide, which has really helped, and just trying to use Spanish more on a regular basis. So knowing the days of the week, when we do the days of the week song with my 4-year-old for his, preschool calendar time, we've been actually doing the Spanish version with my 7-year-old as well. So this has gone really well. So what I have her do is on Mondays, we would do the lesson, we would do the activity, and she'd make flashcards. And then we would be doing the flashcards throughout the week as practice, but that's gone really well. She really does enjoy Song School Spanish. The other thing she's been doing is core knowledge 2nd grade, which I'll show you real quick. A couple units left to finish for core knowledge that went into summer, and that was Domain 11, immigration, and fighting for a cause. And these both went really well. I love the stories that they attached to immigration and for fighting for a cause. And it's funny because we've talked about a lot of the figures they mention here: Cesar Chavez, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr. So we covered a lot of them, Jackie Robinson, through our social justice units. But it was nice to see different stories that we've come across and that we've also been covering these things. So it's just another layer to add to what she knows already. But she enjoyed both these units, and this was one of their shorter units, so it didn't take very long. But I really do like that they incorporated this in a 2nd grade unit, because understanding that there's always been people willing to stand up for what they believe in, for when they see things that are wrong or injustice, that they are willing to stand up. I think that's a great message to be sending to our young people, that, we are the cause for change. So she really enjoyed this unit. Again, it was really quick, just reading the student reader, comprehension, vocab, questions, critical thinking, that type stuff. And then she would usually have an activity, and what she did for this is she would often write poems. So for each individual, she would write a free verse poem, which she actually really liked, and it was a nice introduction into writing, that there aren't really rules with free verse poems. You could just write what you remembered. So you can see this is the instructions here. So for each person, you were given a layout and a free verse poem and some lines, and you could do whatever you wanted to. She really enjoyed that. As far as activities for her, she did gymnastics all this summer. She really enjoyed it, continued with that. She participated in VBS, so 7 of our local area churches get together and they do a week-long VBS, and that was a lot of fun. And she did the summer reading program at the library, which was really motivational for her to independently read. She's motivated by charts, and the library had different rewards that once you read, you got different things. So that was a lot of fun. And she actually read a lot this summer independently without me assigning it or asking her to read. She was picking up books for fun this summer. So that was really exciting for me to see, but summer went really well for her. Next, I'm gonna do my 11-year-old. This was my 11-year-old schedule. And the only difference between the June and July schedule was the group subjects at the end. So math went well for her. She finished 4B. 1 math skills, that is Math Mammoth Review, just like my oldest was doing. Those are things she practiced on a daily basis. Typing is something she did on Fridays independently using online typing club. I'll insert that down below. One thing we did try out this summer was Editor-in-Chief and Fix-It Grammar. So I printed the first 3 weeks of Fix-It Grammar off the Editor-in-Chief. I was looking at something specifically for her to practice mechanics. She's really good with grammar, she's good with writing, punctuation, capitalization, the mechanics of writing she needed to focus on, and that's something that came up in her map testing that she needs to focus more on too. So Fix-It Grammar, we tried the first 3 weeks, and then we tried Editor-in-Chief the next 3 weeks. So Fix-It Grammar was a great program. She had disliked it in the past when we first tried it, when we tried IEW, but she liked it this year, and she really liked how easy it was. And honestly, we switched over to Editor-in-Chief because I often see videos where it's saying Fix-It Grammar is a dupe for Editor-in-Chief, or they're like the same thing. I disagree pretty strongly with that. Fix-It Grammar is a lot different, at least in the ways my daughter was using it. So for Chief, you get, the lesson, And I'm using this solely as review purposes. This is not an introduction to new concepts at all for my oldest. She knows all this stuff, but she needs to practice it. You get a lesson, and then each day you get writing with a picture and caption, and then you do whatever the lesson is. So she was looking for verbs in here. One thing she was working on this past week was a verb agreement, which is really important. So how this benefited her more than the fix-it grammar. Fix-it grammar, she knows parts of speech. She can do all that. If she sees a single sentence, she can easily fix it. She can more easily see that that needs a capital, that needs a period at the end. And because of her experience with fix-it grammar, Michael Clay Thompson, that was really easy for her. This was not as easy for her because this is really making her look at a larger section or selection of writing and fixing it in specific areas she's fixing it in. Because again, sentence by sentence, she does really well. But when she writes, she's writing, 2-page papers, 5-paragraph essays with IEW. She needs to be able to go back and look at that large sample of writing and pick out those areas that she's been missing. Because in her head, she knows a capital starts at the beginning of a sentence, but she writes so quickly that she needs to be able to recognize and go back and see where those errors are. So I think that is a really big difference that Editor-in-Chief has helped her more in the mechanics and the bigger types of sampling of writing than the single sentence of fix-it grammar. So we will continue into Editor-in-Chief into the school year because I think this is actually helping her in helping the skills that she needs to grow, opposed to fix-it grammar, which was skills she was already pretty adequate with. So that is one thing I would say about this, that I do think fix-it grammar and Editor-in-Chief are different. So this summer we did sample out IEW. We tried IEW 1B, and again, I just printed the first 3 free lessons off IEW site to see, because I was debating having her do IEW 1B or 2B, because I did the previous 2 levels with her and it was really easy and a lot of repetition. And this is a child that does not necessarily need that repetition in the language arts field. And I was noticing she was finishing, because you can see IEW is usually broken into 4 or 5 day programs. She's usually finishing her writing, her 5-paragraph writing by day 2 or day 3. So I wanted to test it out. I had her do the first 3 weeks of 1B, went really quick, no issues. So I decided to get 2B and test that out. And we actually purchased this one because they do not have the sample. And I figured even if she didn't do it this year, she'd be doing it the following year, so I'd use it eventually. But she has done the first 3 weeks of this now. And I do like to start in the summer because it is something that takes a little bit more time. So it's one of those things that's easier to start in summer and bring into the school year than do the entire workload all starting in the beginning of the year. This is going really well. The one thing I've noticed is the source texts are longer. You can see here, and that's what I would expect to see because this is meant for 7th grade level. So a lot of the notes sections you get are similar. The source texts are longer. It's not taking you, 3 days to write a 5-paragraph essay anymore. It's upping it up a little, which has worked really well for her. And again, she's still finishing her writing by day 3 or day 4 and is ready for corrections. So I think this is going really well. I'm glad that I made the decision to bump her up to 2B, but I will continue to update how that goes as we go through the year. The other thing we started this summer was of Michael Clay Thompson, and that was just once a week, and that was in June. And again, we went through the beginning of this. I think we got to part 2. Yeah, the parts of a sentence. So a lot of the beginning was just the 8 parts of speech. She knows this really well from using Michael Clay Thompson in the past, doing the sentence analysis. So she's familiar with a lot of that. So we did stop at level 2 to bring it into the following year, but it went well. Now back to what she did activity-wise this summer. She participated in 2 book clubs. So she did the library book club, and that was once a month for June and July. No, twice a month for June and July. And one of them was graphic novels, and one of them was like a chapter book. And she's read both of them previously, which was pretty funny. And unfortunately, there weren't a lot of kids that showed up to the book group because it was aimed at this age level. And I just think there's just this dropout in this age of, 6th, 7th, 8th graders where there's just not a lot of activities available for them, or they're not interested in participating, which is unfortunate. But she still had fun doing those programs, and there was a art activity with one of them. The other thing she did was she takes horseback riding lessons every Friday. She's done that for almost 2 years now. And the instructor also during the summer has a horse book club because she was also a former teacher for 35 years. So she has different groups of kids that she does it with based on their age level. They choose a book, they read the book, they do different activities with the horses, and they learn all about horse stuff. And it's about an hour and a half. It was once a week for June and July, all of July. And she had a lot of fun with that, and she's familiar with the horses, and they practice different reading techniques and group discussions. So it was nice to have a peer group literature analysis in that way, especially led by an actual teacher, that they were going deeper into the stories than just discussing the characters or what they thought. It was more of a literary analysis, which was pretty cool. And she did VBS this past summer, and this was the last summer she'll be a participant. Next year she will be one of the helpers or the leaders for the kids. And it was really cool because usually VBS ends with we have 7 churches that get together, different denominations, and at the end we have a big church service outside at one of the outdoor spaces we have in our town. And she volunteered to do one of the readings, and she did really well in this large group stadium type thing where she had to do her section of the reading. She did really well. She actually does really well with public speaking, which I think surprises a lot of people because my oldest is definitely a lot more on the quiet side, and she's definitely more of a thinker than outwardly expressing herself. But she does really well with public speaking, and I think that a lot of that comes from, one, being in church for her entire life. She's used to that atmosphere. And 2, I do think IEW helps with it because they teach you when you're doing your keyword outline to look down, read your paper, or know what you're going to say, look up, and then read. So I do think that aspect helps as well, that it prepares them to publicly speak in the structure and style levels, at least that I've noticed. So those are the things that she did this summer. So let's go into group subjects. So you can see this was group subjects for June, and this was group subjects in July. So June, group subjects were climate change. This was a reminder that she had a book club that day. So climate change, we did Carnegie Hall Music Explorers for music, and then art, we did Atelier Art. In July, we did pet math and financial literacy, and then we had music and art for that month as well. So let's start with climate change. So we used the Science of Climate Change hands-on course by Blair Lee. This went really well. And I really like that a lot of math and science and graphing and interpreting data was included in this, because that is something my oldest is interested in. She specifically asked to do climate change this summer because it's a passion area of her, and she definitely wants to go into something like conservation. She's very into activism as well. But I think it's written in such a way that it breaks down, because to talk about climate change, you have to talk about different areas of science. And some of those can be technical. When we were talking about the science or chemistry aspect of that, breaking that down so a child can understand, this does a really, really good job of. And the activities I think were really good. So the first one, we made a little box and we had to guess how many gas molecules were in this box, and you use the box for a different part of the experiment later. I think the chemistry aspect was done really well. So the experiment was how small amounts can have a big effect. So you're looking at greenhouse gases, the rise of greenhouse gases, how that affects it. So the only thing I had to purchase to use this was Kool-Aid, because we didn't have any. And if you didn't know, Kool-Aid is gluten-free. My youngest daughter has celiac disease, so that was something I just wanted to point out, that Kool-Aid's gluten-free. Not all, obviously, check your labels. And I had to buy matches for an experiment, and then I had to buy Alka-Seltzer tabs. Those are the only things I had to buy to use this for the month of June. So I thought that was pretty cool. But this really was a nice visual, especially since my 7-year-old joined us for this, a visual of how greenhouse gases work. And one of the fun things is we went and we looked at how a hybrid car looks. So we have a hybrid vehicle, and we have a regular minivan, and we looked at the engines and we turned them on and looked at what happens when you turn the vehicles on and the different uses. Looked at global warming. And again, I really like the math aspect of that, because my 7-year-old or my 11-year-old is interested in this area, but she's not a big fan of math. So I thought it was really cool that she got to see how those affect how real life applications of math, of people actually using it. So I did make copies of this just because I do plan on using it in the future. They got to do some graphing, and I like that it had 2 different options for the younger kids and the older kids. One thing I would say is definitely do this during the warmer months, because one of the things we had to look at was temperature of an enclosed space. And we did that outside with cups of water, and one was covered and one wasn't, and it shows you how that affects the temperature. So I would not recommend doing this in the middle of winter unless you live somewhere that's warm. But you can see we did a lot of the papers and worksheets that went well with it, but I think it's a really great program. Of course, it has all the answers in the back if you need help with any of that. But one thing that was really nice is we looked at the temperature in our area. So we did some graphing, and that's one of the sheets in here. They looked at the temperature of where we live for the last 30 years. And you can look at the difference of precipitation when wind speed wasn't really affected in our area, but precipitation went down in our area while the temperature continued to rise. I think that's a really good example for kids to see that, how that affects that. If there's a significant degree change in the last 30 years, what's going to happen? Yeah, here's ours. What's going to happen in another 30 years? What is the climate going to be like for them? So that was really a good experiment to show the numbers and actually what's happening and what will happen if we don't make changes now. So looking at the 30-year average, I thought that was really cool. And then, of course, they did enjoy the Alka-Seltzer, looking at the amount of carbon in things. I will insert a picture of that. I didn't take a lot of pictures of when we were doing experiments, because I'd rather just do the experiments and be in the moment than trying to capture specific moments. That's just how I am. I'm not doing these things just to make videos. What I'm doing, if I find it interesting, I'll share it with you guys, but I'm not going to stop what I'm doing to make a video of it. One of the things was fun is we went to the grocery store and looked at how far our food traveled to reach us, and how, gas emissions, things like that, has an impact. They had to analyze their own carbon footprint, which was pretty cool. And then, of course, it ends with what changes can you make? So it's not just, this doom, the world's warming up, there's nothing we can do. They, as individuals, can do. They can make a difference now, just like I can make a difference now, because we determine the future. So this was a really great unit, and I highly recommend it. And again, I did it with my 7-year-old and my 11-year-old, and I think it was broken down enough for both of them to clearly understand what I was talking about. It's funny, because when we were talking about this, we were talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we could see the physical molecules in front of us? And my oldest is like, wouldn't it be cool if we could manipulate those molecules and make different things with them? So that was really fun. I recommend that a lot. So we did that in the month of June. And then in July, we focused on financial literacy. I had 2 things for that. I got this from Five Below. This I was actually worked out really well. So we looked at, the only thing we didn't cover in this book was the investing. I didn't go into bonds and things like that, because I think that's just a little much at this age. But we did talk about savings, goals, we talked about credit and debt, and we talked about student loan debt and all the issues surrounding that, credit card debt, consumer debt. And it's funny because my kids, after going through this, we played, they were playing an entrepreneurship game where they each had a business, and my 7-year-old was the bank, and my 4-year-old wasn't paying his loan back to the bank on time, so she ended up foreclosing on him. So it was interesting to see the things we talked about on financial literacy come into play in their actual playing, because that's, I think, especially with younger kids, the way that they process the information is through imaginative play. So this was actually really good, and we liked that a lot. Pet math, my kids thought was fun, and they thought it was easy. So it's 4th, 3rd through 5th grade. The math, some of them was, division and multiplication. My 7-year-old is not prepared to do yet, but all the addition she could do, subtraction problems she could do. And my, of course, 11-year-old thought all of it was really easy. Specifically, there was a part in here when they did perimeter. And because she uses dimensions math, she's used to missing sections and the super complicated problems, and she had all the sides to do the perimeter and the area of something. So she's like, this is so easy. But they enjoyed it over how to write a check, how to balance your checkbook. Like I said, perimeter, area, but using, actual math problems in real life scenarios. The one thing I would say I didn't really like is that the pages, each was a separate activity. They weren't related to one another. It wasn't like a continuation of something you learned or continuation of the stories. They were all very different scenarios. But they did enjoy the review game, which is in the back. They got a budget, and it was a game that, depending on what they rolled, they had to add or subtract from their budget to see who had money left over at the end. And that was really cool. We did it on whiteboards. We did a lot of this on whiteboards. They both had a whiteboard. My 7-year-old would be doing the addition problem, so she could easily do the perimeter questions, while my 11-year-old was doing things like area and division, things that would require a little bit higher level than my 7-year-old is in math. But yeah, they would race to see who could do the math quicker, because my 7-year-old can do a lot of mental math. My 11-year-old can write it down, and they would race to see who could do that. But it was fun. I would say they enjoyed it, and they did learn about, budgeting and expenses and things like that. So for art, we did atelier art, and we've been working on this for the last couple years. This is just an old program I got off eBay. They do have a newer version of this. Again, are the videos older? Yes. Do my kids care? No. I do like that they have examples of what the kids in the classrooms make and things like that. So we finished all of our picture studies, and this is just because we had done some previously. Like I said, we did it once a week for 8 weeks, so we had a few in here that we still had to go over. We went over this one and this one, and we just did some picture studies, which there's questions in here on how to analyze different paintings or pictures or artwork and what is art. That's all in this teacher manual. My 4-year-old did join us a few times for art, but usually he was resting during that time. So this was the Polar Express one that they did. And then we learned about textures. So they used chalk and a liquid paste. Can't really see it on camera, but it's supposed to show the texture of a bunny. They did shape art, which reminded me of Eric Carle, the Hungry Caterpillar type thing, where he would cut out tissue paper to make it. So that was farms, and they just ripped out pieces of paper to make that. One of them was a carnival theme, which was interesting because my oldest is very against carnivals and the exploitation of animals. So this was my 7-year-old. She made a mermaid in hers. But my 11-year-old made some protest art. This was hers because she does not think animals should be used for entertainment purposes or caged And that was kind of the example given in the atelier, because again, it's an older curriculum, is looking at different circus animals in cages and things like that. So she was very against that. So this is her activism protest art. And then one of the last ones we did was Cat in the Hat, and they were supposed to do like a where is the cat in the hat? They had to disguise Cat in the Hat in the picture using certain lines. And my 7-year-old decided to make, if you can't tell, this is Cat in the Hat here, hidden beneath all the lines and the busyness. And then my 11-year-old hid Cat in the Hat in hers by actually physically drawing a cat wearing a hat instead of the traditional Cat in the Hat we're used to seeing. I believe it's somewhere in here where there's an actual cat on all 4 legs just wearing a hat, opposed to the black and white cat in hat we're used to seeing. So the only other thing we did was music, which I'll bring over to the computer for that. So we did the Carnegie Hall Music Explorers program. So we finished all of program 2 and got halfway through program 3. We just did not get to Indian classical, but we did cover all these, and it went really well. There was video lessons with introductions. It was more of a callback type of method where they would sing, and then you would sing back, and it had different activity options. There was always extension activities as well. So as you can see here, this is the one we finished up last week. So there's a video lesson, there's opportunity to listen to specific music, different activities. And then sometimes there was book options, and we would often, play these on YouTube on our big TV, and there was different extension activities. So it was a lot of fun. I highly suggest this program if you're looking for something for music. I do like that it's talking about music from around the world opposed to just specific areas or specific time periods. I did like that cultural aspect as well, but the kids enjoy this, and my 4-year-old would often join us for this as well. So that was our summer. It was full of stuff, and you can see from my schedules, they had stuff to do for school, but they also had a lot of outside time, playing with friends, going to the pool, going to the park, lots of outdoor activities. Most of the stuff we have here, we were done shortly before or after lunch, and it was a lot of more fun units that they were interested in. So it was a very full and fun summer. If you have any specific questions about anything I talked about, leave it in the comments below. If not, thank you for watching.